Hey, good. Welcome, everybody. Really appreciate you coming. It's 7 o'clock. And so we want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know we're all um, interested in the information that came out today. And so we will discuss that. Um, so, um, yeah, what an interesting year we've had, and it continues to be an interesting year. So thank you for joining me tonight. Thank you for being interested in fifth through eighth grade basketball. Um, and looking forward to talking about the season and answering any questions that you might have. Before we start with prayer, just so you know, in the chat, please feel free to leave questions in there, and I will check the chat from time to time to see if there's a way that we can answer some of those. So hopefully you guys all know how to use the chat function. But if you have a question you want to ask right away, just put it right in there, and we'll get to it as we go. So let's pray. God, we thank you for the opportunity to meet today to talk about something fun, something different, something exciting, different from some of the struggles and the challenges that we have, and just to talk about basketball and how to give our kids hopefully some level of normalcy through athletics throughout the rest of this month and into February and March and hopefully moving forward. And we just pray for health and safety for everyone. Pray for each of the parents here, that you give them a measure of patience and a measure of understanding for the things their kids and coaches and everybody's going to be going through during the season, and the ups and downs of the schedule and things that may occur. And we just pray that you give us all in Gravis Christian a level of grace and understanding, knowing that you're in control. We thank you for you giving us the chance to be here and for giving us this great school. May we do things that are pleasing to you and honor you in all that we do. So thank you, and bless our time tonight. Amen. Real quick, just a couple of things. Some of you guys have been in some of the other meetings, so I don't think you can hear this enough, but the goal of our athletic program here is to give kids an opportunity to play, learn, grow, make mistakes, improve, gain clarity on if they want to pursue sports or not going forward, to have fun. The coaches, their goal is to teach students, to help them enjoy the game, to help them want to play the game more by the end of the year. And sometimes that happens, and sometimes kids and parents gain clarity on maybe they don't want to keep going with the sport, and that's part of it too. We really want to make sure there's challenges and obstacles and difficulties that everybody gets to wrestle with in the classroom of athletics. And most importantly of all that, our goal is that we can do all that while learning about Jesus Christ and his role for our lives, and helping our kids understand a little bit more about him through the classroom of athletics. So with that said, a couple quick things for those of you who are new about fifth and sixth grade. If you're new to educational athletics in fifth grade, or you're in sixth grade and this is a new thing for you, it's a little bit different than what you're used to in a rec program. It's educational competitive athletics now. It's not rec anymore. It's not equal everything all the time. When it comes to basketball, there's no longer equal playing time. There's 24-minute games in fifth and sixth grade, and there's 6 minutes required by the league for each person to play. And that sometimes can be tough depending on your size of team and the way the game is going. But that's different. It's not going to be all equal everything. We do meet 3 times a week at a minimum for fifth and sixth grade. And that's stuff where like you need to be there now. Like, this is educational athletics, and there's a commitment level, and the team function is really important. I know my son plays in the rec program, and it's kind of like, if he can't make it because we got a family thing where I'm just too busy to bring him, it's okay. It's no big deal. But when we get to educational athletics, we want to start teaching a little bit more about the commitment to making sure we are at everything that we're supposed to be at. Communication becomes a big deal. Again, with my team, I'm going to communicate with our rec program coach who's ever coaching my son's team, but not everybody does that. And now that we're in educational athletics, it's important to communicate about tardiness, about absence, and doing that in a timely manner is really important. It's a great place for us to teach our kids about the importance of doing that. The coaches that we have are sometimes parents, but sometimes they're college students. Sometimes they're super experienced coaches that have been around or done a lot of big things. But it's a whole range of people. What you need to know is they're trained by me, they're managed by me, they're paid to do a job, and so they're required to do a lot of things for us. And one thing that I think is so great, and I'm so proud of our coaches for, is that we stand out as really different in our league. Even last night, on Monday night, I had a meeting with the league, and one of the athletic directors said, hey, whatever Grand Rapids Christian is doing to teach their coaches and train their coaches, that's what we need to do with all of our schools, because their coaches are always well behaved. They're always professional. And it was just a phenomenal, compliment that our school community got. And so we're just proud of our coaches, and we didn't ask for that, but that was just recognized in our executive group. And I just thought that was so cool. So, we do work really hard with our coaches. Certainly they're not perfect, but we are training coaches, managing them, reviewing them, and all of those things. And then the schedules are created by our league. I don't have much of a pull in that. I don't get to manipulate the schedules to help you out or anything like that. It's just kind of like we put in certain days we can't play due to school functions. And after that, we just kind of have to take the schedule we get, paid officials and all that kind of thing. So it's a little different than rec. When it comes to 7th and 8th grade, it's a lot the same, except playing time, there's 32-minute games and only 6 minutes are required for 7th and 8th graders. So there's more minutes available, but the same amount required, which means playing time sometimes can be a little bit more unequal, which is appropriate as we move towards high school. We compete and practice 4 times a week instead of 3. 7th grade, we still equal split the teams just like in 5-6, but we enter them into an upper division once they're split equally, which puts us at a bit of a disadvantage because we split up all of our talent and then we go play in the division that is the most competitive. So we in 7th grade sometimes take a few more lumps than normal. But that's a good thing for us to kind of learn about what it takes to play athletics at a higher level, that next step up. And then in 8th grade, we split by developmental level if we have enough kids, and we always enter at least one team in the upper division, that most competitive division. And if we have a second team, we enter them in, developmentally appropriate lower division for better competition for their skill levels. And so that's a little bit of the 7th and 8th grade versus 6th, 5th, and 6th grade. Does anybody have a question about kind of how those things work, those 2 different levels and kind of what they're like? Okay. If you do, just type it in the chat. So just a couple things to remember. This is a voluntary thing. And I think sometimes we as, parents, we sometimes can forget about that and think that our kid is owed something, but it's a voluntary thing. We follow the rules. Everybody gets a chance to participate. We do guarantee that. But it is certainly voluntary, and it takes a lot of courage for kids to come out. Some of you are encouraging your daughter to play, and she doesn't really play, and that can be scary. And so there's a lot of courage involved, and we just want you to continue to encourage them to do that and to invest in that courage and the challenge and the uncertainty, because those things really help form kids when they can push through that. The player's job is do their best, right? Do their best so that we can create equal teams and teach them and help them learn. That's the whole goal of our coaches, and also playing time. We want to talk about that in a little bit too. But if you have a concern about your child is not getting the minimum amount of playing time, please bring that up. If it's a concern about my daughter should be getting 20 minutes a game instead of 15, I would just keep that to yourself. That's not the role of the parent to decide on the playing time minutes outside of that. And so my encouragement is that you just keep that to yourself, or, if you really, really feel excessively strongly about that, you could ask coach to talk about that. But my encouragement is don't get into that world with our coaches. Our coaches deal with enough challenges and difficulties. They're doing their best. They're not trying to pigeonhole anybody. And so that's obviously, I had a Kelvin prof tell me one time, everybody wants it to be fair as long as it's a little bit more fair for their kid. And as I've gone through being a parent, I've noticed that. I feel that way too. Like, hey, that's not quite fair for my kid, and I felt that pull. And so I'm certainly experiencing that myself. And I thought that was a wise thing that he said. So we'll talk a little more about playing time in just a minute. Let me pull this up for you. So as we discuss playing time, I do have this, and I will, this is a sheet that kind of guides our playing time. The coaches have this, and they're going to send it to you when they do their meeting with you. They're going to go over this with you in depth. But the basics of it are, we value development of skills over winning. right? We're not hanging banners in our gym, or there's no state championships or anything like that. We're trying to help kids learn. Okay. And so we want to help them learn through it. As we get a little further up, it's going to be a little bit less equal with playing time. The basics is that Graciac nor GRC thinks that it should be equal. It's a 6-minute minimum, and everybody will get that. That is a guarantee. The way that plays out for us is basically if kids are showing up on time consistently, doing their best every day, and having a good attitude, our goal is to try to beat those minimums in each game that we play. Okay, our coach's goal is to make sure they get more opportunities to show what they can do if they're doing these things. To the same extent, if you're the most talented player and you're not showing up, you're not doing your best, and you're having a bad attitude, even though you're the best player, you might only get 6 minutes because that's what's required, right? And so we want to make sure we're honoring those process-oriented goals of showing up, doing your best, having a positive attitude. Those are things we want to try to honor. So we want to give kids as much time as we can within the rules, and we always want to try to beat that minimum for them. And so, the sequence is that it's much less equal in 8th grade than it is in 5th grade. 5th grade, it'll be more equal. 6th grade, if you're in a 6th grade right now, you've got 12 kids on a team, which means playing time is pretty hard to come by with only 24-minute games, right? So it will be, a little bit much more equal in 5th and 6th grade, but it won't be equal. And also we want to give everybody a chance to play with everybody when possible. So it will get mixed around, and that means some of the better players will play more because everybody wants a chance to play with those kids so they can have the best chance to be, game successful in those moments. But we shouldn't expect it to be equal. And it is the coach's prerogative. I just want to remind you of that. They don't know your child the way you know them. Please understand that. They see what they see in practice and what they see in games. They haven't been watching them for 12 years or whatever like you have. And so, just encourage the coaches, encourage the kids to fight through it, to do their best. And the coaches will certainly do their best to give kids opportunities and beat those minimums. So playing time is always a hot button issue. That's why we want to spend a little time on it. Is there any questions as I look at the chat here? Are there any questions about playing time while I answer some of these questions in the chat? First question from Cammie. Are there 2 teams for 8th grade? No, there's just 1 team this year. We only have 9 players. 2 of them are from Ada Christian. So 7 from our school, 2 from Ada Christian. So we have 9, just 1 team. The second one, is basketball considered a non-contact sport? No, it is considered contact. So we'll cover that at the end when we talk about the COVID rules and regulations. Okay. Anybody have questions about playing time? Okay. So let's go to the next thing. Planning for the team formation. So our current plan, and this does get into some of these COVID things, is that 8th grade will be 9 to 10:30 on Saturday. That's remaining intact. 7th grade will be 10:30 to 12, which will remain intact for Saturday. And then one of the things that you'll want to note is 8th grade is going to stay after dismissal on Monday. We have Martin Luther King Jr. Day, noon dismissal. 8th grade is going to practice right after that dismissal, 12:15 to 2. Also on Monday will be 7th grade at 3:15 to 5. 6th grade is 5 to 6:30, and 5th grade is 6:30 to 8. So everybody's going to have their first day by Monday, okay? But 7th and 8th grade, they've got a little bit of those nuances, and I think your coaches have already emailed you about that with those times and dates. So please refer to those emails. They'll also email you again this weekend. I'm going to send them a note tomorrow about some of the things that we learned today, and they'll be sending you another note this weekend to kind of update you on all the things that we've gone over, and also to confirm those schedules for the first week, okay? As far as other COVID things, masks, we're going to focus on mask wearing for our players. So everybody needs to have a mask, coaches, players, parents, when you're in the gym for a game, everybody's got to wear a mask. And one of the things that came up in winter 1 was some of the parents from not our school, but other schools were kind of harping on mask wearing from the stands. And that's not really what we want to have our parents do. And I give our parents a ton of credit that they didn't do that, even though other schools were doing that. our goal is to encourage our kids to wear their masks appropriately, right? We wouldn't want another school yelling at our kids, so we want to make sure we're not yelling at another school's kids. Also, the officials do not have to enforce mask wearing. That's not part of their role by the MHSAA. So us yelling to the officials about it is also not a helpful thing, okay? So we just want to make sure that we're focusing on our kids wearing masks as best that we can. We can talk to our coaches about it. We can talk to our kids about it, and let's keep it in that spot. If there's a big issue that you see, please send me an email. Send me a photo, send me an email, because the way that the league is handling masks is the athletic director is to report to the league about mask wearing, and they get official tallies on that. And then there's penalties handed out to those teams. So those teams then get talked to by the league and kind of asked about it and disciplined in some way. And eventually it can be to a point where a team doesn't get to play. And so the key is that we do that in the best way possible. Understand this, kids, their mask is going to fall. It's going to go like this from time to time. Okay. They'll pull it back up, right? It'll come down a little bit. They'll pull it back up. Somebody might do this and pull it back down. Okay. They're going to be fussing with it. All right. And that's just part of it. I mean, I've watched a ton of sports now this fall, and it's just kind of the way that it goes. And so I want to encourage you. The kids are doing the best they can to keep it on. It's a lot of times an unconscious thing, because you wear masks, that you're unconsciously moving that thing around. And so please just understand that's going to happen. Our kids aren't going to be perfect, especially when they're thinking about basketball, trying to listen to their coach, trying to figure out what the ref just called, all that stuff going on. So give them a little grace, and we'll do our best. As a gym manager at our gym, my job is to talk with both teams about keeping masks up. So that is something that whoever is our gym manager is trained on, to how to communicate with coaches about that, and then also to report that to the league when things aren't going right. Okay, so any questions about masks that you have right now? It can be a touchy subject, and it's totally understandable. So if anybody has a question about how to handle those situations, please speak up or put something in the chat. One of the things in the chat is the sixth grade the first day of sixth grade is 5 to 6:30 on Monday, and your coach has already sent that out. But that will still happen 5 to 6:30 on Monday. And again, those coaches will resend a schedule email this weekend. So don't worry. Just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. One of the things that we're going to do with health checks is, you guys are all familiar with Team Snap by now from being part of our program. All your teams will be in Team Snap. Your coach will communicate with you there. You're going to get an invitation to that once we have a schedule. And then once you're in there, you'll get reminders of the practices and reminders of the games and that sort of thing. But another thing that you're going to do in there is you're going to do a health check before the game. So the league requires, like the screener we do for school in the morning, there's a screener like that on Team Snap. So I'm going to try to pull it up real quick and give you kind of an example. So like, if I was to click schedule at the bottom, see schedule down there highlighted in blue. This is what the app looks like from your view. So that blue thing, if I click that, it'll show you a game. You can pick a game, and then in here, you'll see at the top, my health check, incomplete. So on a game day, before you get to the gym, basically what you have to do is ask your kid the questions on the way to the game, and then fill out the health check so that they're eligible to play in the game. Does that make sense to everybody? It's really gone very well. It hasn't been very cumbersome. And the nice thing is the coach checks this before the game. And if the coach sees that you weren't able to do it or something, they can just ask your child the questions and fill out the check for them. So it's best if the parents do it, right? But certainly if we get in a situation where it was forgotten or you got too busy, which definitely happens, I know what it's like, the coach will be watching that and be able to ask those. So that health check is a new thing for winter 1 and now winter 2, where we have to do that before games only. As far as health checks go, you're doing yours for school. and that covers you for practice. If you notice something different when they come home from school before they go to practice, please keep them home. But we're not doing an additional screener before you come to practice or anything like that. Okay. Practice schedules. Coaches will be emailing those to you each week until we get a game schedule from Team Snap and get everybody loaded on Team Snap. Spectators right now, the order today said that indoor sports, when they're allowed to start, which will be after February 1 at this point, there'll be allowed 100 people per indoor venue. Now for us, 100 people would be our entire bleacher if we skipped a row, because we have a 200 person bleacher. So what we did during volleyball was we did a 2-person per athlete. I don't know what the league is going to do. Most of the gyms are smaller than our gym, right? I mean, if you've been around at all, you know, most of them are smaller than ours. They have less seating, which makes me a little nervous to have 100 people in the gym, right? It's going to be hard to keep 6 feet between families. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how the league discusses that, because we certainly don't have to let 100 in. We can let 0 in if we want, but the recommendation is for gyms that you let 100 people in, 50 per team. I think the league will shrink that, but what you need to know is, as long as things go forward the way they're saying, you will get to watch the games. You may have a restricted amount of people that can come, but you will be able to watch the games, okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Just want you to know that and feel confident in that. Masks are good. Certain mask type required. There is no certain mask type that you have to have, except it has to cover your nose and your mouth at the same time. That's the only requirement. Has to cover both. Personally, I am not employed by 32 Degrees, okay, but I think these are the best masks out there. I don't know if you can see this or not. I bought mine at Costco. You can get them in a 4-pack, but they're fantastic. They're 32 Degrees is the brand. And your child would use just the regular size, and adult uses the extended size. But I think they're fantastic. I still have a few of these GR Christian masks that I will just give to your child. If they come to my office, I'll just give you one. They're very breathable, very nice, but we've got probably 15 of them left if you want to send your child over tomorrow or whichever day this week to grab one. So I've got some of those. I'm happy to give those away. Okay. Coach interactions. Any questions at this point that we've covered? Yeah, Cammie, are you raising your hand? Or were you waving?
I typed it in the chat, but I was wondering, is there an option for games to be recorded live? Maybe they could be streamed on a website or a social media platform for those who aren't coming to the games or can't come due to COVID restrictions?
Yeah, it's a good question, Cammie. I think the best way that we were handling that in the fall was, if teams wanted to do that, a team could have somebody come in and stream it on their thing. So like a lot of teams would, for our high school, they would make a volleyball Instagram page or a volleyball Facebook page. And then whoever, just the moms and dads within that team would just communicate on who was going to film it. Right. So they just brought their own stuff in and just did it. It was nothing like formal. The high school has it, Pixelot systems, which are like professional systems that follow the game and have a scoreboard, and it's on a website. And we don't have that here. So the best way that we've done that is kind of have teams own their own streaming, if that makes sense. And we encourage that. It's not hard to do. It just takes a little bit of organization by parents if you guys want to provide that for each other. Okay. Coach interactions. One thing that we've talked about in each of our seasons this year, and I think it's really been good, is it's really hard to work with coaches this year because you don't get to see them very much, right? Like as parents, we can see them after practice. We can watch some practices and see how they interact with kids. Like we have more eyes on, so we understand better. But this year, because we're not allowed to be in the school, you can't really watch. The only time you get to see is maybe at a game. And then you obviously get to hear, whatever your child brings home. And so communication is really important. I talk to my coaches ad nauseum always, but especially this year, even more, that I'm asking them to communicate more often, more in depth with you, because without you being able to be there, it's just, as a parent, you need more information. And I think you guys all understand that. And so the goal is that they let you into what's happening a little bit more. They tell you what they're going on, what they're trying to do, what they're working on a little bit more than usual this year, and that they'll communicate with you often. And so that's a big thing. And I want to compliment soccer, volleyball, and boys basketball. Parents just did a phenomenal job. Communicating with the coaches and the school and me about illness or contact tracing was unbelievable. And it is so important to do that before, things get too, messed up. We got to get that done as soon as possible and get on it right away. And so, if you're communicating that to the school, please also communicate it to me. We want our coach to know. We are going to protect HIPAA wise by not sharing all the details, but certainly the people in charge have to know what's going on, and we have to be able to do our contact tracing. But I want to thank everybody in those first 3 seasons. Just a phenomenal job. If you were part of that, thank you. The other thing that was amazing this year was treating officials and opposing teams so well. We had no complaints from any other schools or officials about sportsmanship. In fact, I got plenty of emails from officials just thanking our crowd and our coaches for the way that they behaved in contrast to our opponents. And I mean, in a year where everybody's shorter on temper, everybody's short on patience, all of those things, we have stood out as different as a Christian school. And I am so glad to be part of a community of people that are willing to rise to that level, right? Instead of sink to a different one. And so it's my hope that we can continue that as we go forward this year. And it's just really helped us hit reset on youth sports. I mean, youth sports are about opportunity and just having fun and being an encouragement and letting kids learn and grow and being grateful for that, instead of what can my child get out of the sport? What status can they gain and what team are they on? It was kind of like, we're just grateful to participate. And when that foundational attitude permeated our community, just the gratefulness to participate, the output from that internal gratitude was just, it stood out, is all I can say. And people recognized it in our league. And so I just want to thank you and encourage you to continue that throughout this season. If we do get to play games, which is still an if, ladies and gentlemen, man, how grateful we need to be for that opportunity for our kids. Let's just treat that so nicely. And so a couple of things to help us do that. Just trust your coach. They're hired and managed by me to love your kid, help them have fun, and to teach them. None of them have it out for your child, or they wouldn't be hired. None of them are trying to make something difficult, like unbearably difficult. They're all encouraged to challenge the kids, right? To provide them a great experience, which means they will have difficulty. They will have struggle. They might come home frustrated. Oh, coach was really tough on me today. Well, why? It's a great question to ask. Why? And when your child says, I don't know, you can challenge them on that, right? Because the coach's job is to push. And sometimes kids don't like that. Sometimes you and I don't like that when our bosses push us. But we know it's important for our growth. And so those great experiences are sometimes things that have challenge and difficulty, and things don't always go right. And even though we work really hard, it doesn't go the way that we want. And that's a rich opportunity in educational athletics. And so that's the kind of great experience. Remember to have gratitude about the opportunity to even participate. And then one thing that we got to remember is, because you're not around and able to see, you're getting one side of the story from your child. It's hard to believe, but sometimes they don't tell us the truth. I have 3-year-old twin girls who already know how to get daddy mad at the other one because they say something with the kind of face and voice expression that gets me all worked up, and then I'm mad at the other one without knowing the story. They're 3.5. I just assume that our middle schoolers do the same thing to make things kind of bend in their direction. And so my encouragement is to have patience and to ask your coach a question. Instead of a statement about, you did this, you, maybe just ask, hey, something happened, wonder if we could talk about it, right? Start with that question, that benefit of the doubt for the coach, that maybe we don't have the full story figured out just from our child reporting it. And that's more important this year than ever. But man, what if we could create a habit of that going forward too, even when we can be around and make our own judgments. If we could just learn to ask questions and work alongside our coaches. And so with that is, two-chair conversations. My church talks a lot about two-chair conversation. I know some of you guys go to the same church as me, so you've heard this too. But that means the coach and you, right? We sit in two chairs and we have a conversation. As soon as we bring in extra chairs, we kind of mess things up, right? Especially if the coach isn't in one of those chairs. And now we're all talking to each other about the coach, damaging that coach's reputation and ability to lead without even involving the two people involved. And so I want to encourage you to create two-chair conversations. Don't do everything through email. You may notice this, but sometimes the tone is not always clearly communicated in email or text. And so that can sometimes mess up communication situations. And so I want to encourage you to use your email and text to say, hey, mind if I give you a call so that I can ask you a question, instead of writing a 5-paragraph, communication to a coach that's going to get misinterpreted. And parents have just done a great job with this. And then last thing about two-chair conversations is if someone else comes to you about the coach or about the situation, my encouragement is that you ask them one question. What did coach say when you asked them about this? Right? And because that's gonna push them right back to a two-chair conversation. Instead of engaging with them about it and having that conversation 2 or 3 chairs outside of the coach, you can push them back into the correct two-chair conversation by just saying, what did coach say when you asked them about that or asked her about that? And so that's my encouragement to you, is to try very hard this year to communicate well with coach, ask a lot of questions, provide benefit of the doubt. They're hired because they love kids and want to teach your kids. And so please try to communicate that way with coaches this year. And then the other thing that I talk about with basketball, one of our coaches, Jim Voss, talks about this better than anyone and uses himself as the example. But I believe in basketball, there are 2 pits of destruction that we often put our kids in. Pit number 1 is the sideline parent coach, okay? And the reason this is a pit of destruction is because the child does not know who to listen to. Do they listen to the person who coaches them every day, who's trying to get the team to do something together that the parent doesn't know about? But they're trying to get the team to do something together, and they have their communication. They have a lot of history and how that works. Do they listen to that coach who's going to give them playing time or not? Or do they listen to the parent, the person who's in charge of their entire life, right? And so you put them in this unwinnable situation. If they listen to coach, they don't listen to mom or dad, now they're in trouble. If they listen to mom or dad and they're looking in the stands all the time, then they can't listen to coach, and coach is going to be frustrated. So when we try to coach during the game from the bleachers, it puts them in an unwinnable situation. And I know you're trying to help. I know for me, it's really hard because I've coached a lot of sports and I just want to tell my son or whoever what to do. And Jim talks about this too. He wants to tell him exactly what to do, and he probably knows better than the coach because he's coached so many things. But he can't do it because his child will always lose. So my encouragement is encourage your child, talk to them about it afterwards, right? But please don't talk about it during the game because it puts them in an unwinnable situation. Pit number 2, behavior in the stands around officials or others. It's the same thing. The child loses focus on the game when we're focused on the officials, right? We want to encourage kids. And we want to encourage them to play the game, to do their best, to deal with adversity, to deal with challenges. We don't want to teach them that the role of the fan is to complain to the officials. Here's something I can tell you about officials. 60% of our officials are over the age of 50. Okay? The majority of those officials, 45%, well, not the majority, but 45% of those officials did not participate this year due to COVID. So we have an official shortage in volleyball and in basketball. And so we don't have enough officials. We had to cancel volleyball games this fall because we didn't have officials. Okay. And so what we want to do is make sure we are not giving the officials a hard time. If you know the game well enough to give the official a hard time and tell them how bad they are, then I will hand you an application to become an official and put on stripes, because we need more officials. I'm just telling you that. If you know well enough to give them a hard time, you will see me with an application walking up to you and you'll know what I'm talking about, right? Please join us with officials. We need more of them so we don't have to cancel games. Please don't run them out of our gym. We're Grand Rapids Christian, right? We want them to come to our gym and feel safe, feel encouraged, feel a part of youth sports, not dread coming to our stands or wherever we are. You know, let's please make sure that we encourage them and cheer for them, or be neutral to them, right? And just let them do what they do. And they're going to do a bad job. All of the good officials are in high school. All of the new officials, or the ones that aren't good enough for high school and have been bumped down, they're the ones we get, right? We get all of the bad officials. So for your expectation to be that the officials will be good is crazy. You can't have that expectation, because they will be bad. So that's just a word on officials. Let's handle that well. Let's encourage them. Just like we don't expect perfection out of our kids or ourselves, we shouldn't expect it out of these learning officials or officials who aren't good enough to do high school athletics. So those are my big things. You know, let's make sure that we help kids and don't put them in those pits of destruction. We certainly prefer that they focus on, you know, doing their best, handling adversity, rather than on complaining about officiating. And so that's kind of all we have for kind of the program. I want to show you real quick the COVID cliff notes and talk about the regulations that came out today. And then we'll get you out of here. But I want to show you. Did somebody have a question?
And he said Catholic has pickleball basketball this season.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Unmute your thing. Oh, really? That's our lead.
Right.
Okay, can you guys see this Cliff Notes page? Am I sharing that with you?
You were, and now you're not.
I'm not, now I am again?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so the regulations that came out today are that contact sports such as basketball and wrestling are not to participate in regular format yet. Meaning,
yeah, you gotta find that key tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, I gotta try to.
Okay.
You guys watching?
Oh, Brony.
Addison Barton, please mute.
You know that Trump got in.
Thank you.
Thanks. So we are allowed to practice. We cannot have contact, which in basketball, that would mean scrimmaging, right? Like 5-on-5 or a 3-on-2 fast break drill, or practicing out of bounds plays with defense out there. There can be no like defense versus offense type situations at this point. That's high school, that's middle school, that's supposed to be everywhere. Our goal is to honor that. Some schools will not. You'll hear things from other schools, oh, they're not doing that, they're scrimmaging. And you know what? We're not going to stop them, but we are going to make sure that we do the right thing as Grand Rapids Christians. So we are going to hold practice. There will be probably more of a focus on conditioning, ball handling, shooting, 5-on-0 type stuff. Like we're going to learn these out of bounds plays, but it's just going to be 5 offensive players and no defense yet. And we're going to make sure we know the plays, right? So there's going to be, we can make a lot of progress in the next 2 weeks doing 5-on-0 without scrimmaging each other. Mr. Hiram, our high school athletic director, tomorrow there's a big meeting with MHSAA where they're going to be clarifying a lot of these regulations that the health department put out for athletics. And so he doesn't want us to be too worried about it yet. He wants us to make sure that we're planning to start. And he thinks that there's an opportunity that possibly even before that February 1, there will be an opportunity for kids to start scrimmaging before we get to that February 1 date. But at this point, we're going to just follow the rules as best we can because they're the rules that we have to follow. And so we will start. The coaches are going to be told about, trying to keep kids 6 feet apart. Certainly no sustained time within 6 feet. If they walk past each other, that's not a big deal. If they're setting a screen on nobody and they brush past, that's not a big deal. That's not what the health department's talking about. They just don't want kids shoulder to shoulder and pushing on each other and all that kind of stuff. So we're gonna follow those rules. Everybody's going to wear a mask. We're going to learn a lot, do a lot of skill development work during our time in the gym, and hopefully make a lot of progress in the next 2 weeks for our girls. And really without the worry of a game, which is kind of a blessing, just to learn about basketball and its skills and really drill down and focus on those things, I think is in some ways a blessing for our girls. So that's a good thing. Health screener we talked about, game screener we talked about, kids wear masks. We don't have any contact right now. Games cannot start before February 1. So we'll get you a game schedule as soon as we can. There's a great chance, just like all of our other seasons so far, that we won't have a full 8-game schedule and possibly not a tournament. We don't know. It just kind of depends on how things go. Volleyball got 5 or 6 games, no tournament. Soccer got 6 or 7 games. Boys basketball got 4 games, no tournament. So, we're just hoping to get something for our kids and make the most of it and have a positive attitude about it and enjoy the time that we get to have. I want to remind you, just if your child is not feeling right, please keep them home. We used to think it was great to fight through the sickness, like that Michael Jordan game where he scored 40 some points in the finals when he was throwing up in between timeouts and stuff. We don't really want to push that envelope right now with COVID. Okay. So please keep them home. If they don't feel right, even a little headache, don't make them push through it. It's just better safe than sorry. We'd rather have you miss a practice. We're not going to penalize you, for a sickness like that. We'd rather have you miss a practice than our whole team have to miss 2 weeks. So, just be cautious with that. Send water bottles. The drinking fountains don't work, as you know. Send water bottles and hand sanitizer. Let me know about any COVID stuff, any symptoms or close contact things. That's a really big deal for me to have to track down with Sarah Seth. And so please let us know about that. Bring your own mask. I have extras here. If your child happens to forget, I've got the cheapest masks that were ever created, but they do work. And I've got about 200 of them. So if your child ever forgets, don't worry, we got extras here, but just make sure they have a mask. All of the equipment, like the basketballs, our coaches are going to disinfect all of those at the end of each practice. They're going to stop about 5 minutes early to disinfect all the basketballs, each practice. So when your child comes, they will have a clean set of equipment to start participating with during their practice. And at the end of their practice, it will get disinfected again for the next group. So we are following the guidelines with that, making sure we have our equipment disinfected. But please don't be afraid to send hand sanitizer and whatever else you think will help your child. We're limiting touching. The drills are going to be kind of like kids spread out. When we're in a huddle, it's kind of different this year. I don't know if you've noticed, but we're kind of real spread out, and it's like a real big circle for a huddle instead of like a tight huddle. In locker rooms, there's really no use of locker rooms. So your child, when they go to games, will have to be fully dressed, maybe a change of shoes or something, probably. But other than that, they won't get a locker room. There's no halftime talks or pregame talks in the locker rooms, nothing like that. The parent notes at the bottom there, if you're carpooling, it's obviously recommended that everybody wear a mask when you have different families in a vehicle. It's hopeful we don't have to do that, but certainly if you do, please wear a mask. It's just helpful and has been proven to be helpful. My spectator thing there is a little bit old because of today's information. And drop off and pick up, you're asked to stay, just like normal school day stuff, just stay outside. They're trying to limit as many people in the building as possible. It's nothing personal. It's not we don't like you or anything like that. Just trying to follow the guidelines. So just drop off and pick up outside. So that's kind of our main COVID stuff. We are cleared to start when we're planning to start. Coaches will be modifying practices to keep kids, away from competitive situations. So if you have any questions about COVID guidelines or situations, please unmute and ask. I'm going to look at the chat a minute. Can you repeat the practice games will be scheduled during February break? We will not have any practices or games during our winter break. Thank you for that question. Those are called no play, no host days for us. So I make sure that we don't have anything scheduled during that time. So you are good to go. We won't have practice on, I believe it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Monday. There will be no practice or games on those days. Does that help? Julie says, have the 6th grade coaches contacted their players yet? I don't think so. Everybody's contacted the parent list, so you guys should have all received information, but the coaches haven't been in contact with the kids necessarily because they haven't had a practice yet. So no, but they will be obviously. Okay. Well, if you haven't gotten information from your coach, like someone is saying, just send me an email, and I'll make sure I get that relayed. That's the best way to get a hold of me. I'll be communicating with you a little bit still, kind of on these big picture things. But once once this weekend hits and your coach is emailing you again, your best point of contact is your coach. I just want to thank you for the previous 3 seasons and how we have risen above so much of this challenge and really stood out as a community for doing, God's will and God's work and putting him on display. And I just look forward to seeing what that's going to be for this winter 2 season as well. I appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for partnering with us and with our coaches.